Hey guys, today we're going to discuss the future of America if Donald Trump is allowed to win in November. Specifically, how the MAGA personality cult has weaponized and will continue to weaponize abortion to change America forever. I'm not going to just tell you with words what I think it might be like under Trump. I'm going to prove to you what it will be like because it's happened before. Go back to the Cold War, behind the Iron Curtain. In Romania, there was a brutal communist dictator. He was effectively the Saddam Hussein of Eastern Europe. He enacted a complete abortion ban in 1968 called Decree 770. And the results of that were tragic and devastating. The human stories were appalling, and they hit the most vulnerable in society, women and children. We're going to get into some of those human stories. But first, I want you to imagine three things that will happen if Donald Trump prevails in November. First, I want you to imagine being at work in 2025. I want you to imagine hearing a commotion outside. I want you to think about getting up and looking to see what the noise is and seeing something so incredible you can hardly believe your eyes. A battalion of police officers and a fleet of doctors from the state lining up women outside a bathroom for their monthly involuntary vaginal exam to check for unregistered pregnancies and prior unlawful abortions. It's happened before, and it will happen again under Trump. Number two, I want you to think about your wife, your sister, or your best friend having to obtain a barbaric illegal abortion. Even now, in approximately a dozen states in America, there are total abortion bans where there's no effective health exception. And if these women from these states try to travel across straight lines to get a lawful abortion, human worms like Ken Paxton of Texas will attempt to prosecute her. Women are trapped in these states. 17,000 women died in Romania under similar circumstances and similar pressures. Remember, we're going to talk about something called the coffee table and the bucket later in this video. That's someone's story, and it's the future of abortion under Donald Trump. And finally, I want you to imagine a million orphans packed like third world inmates across crumbling institutions throughout this country. 10 babies to a crib. Toddlers as far as you can see chained to the wall, swimming in their own excrement. An entire lost generation of children who've never felt love, never been given attention, never received affection. MAGA is the most dangerous political movement ever in this country. They seek to extinguish our democratic principles, erase our history, and cast us all into a totalitarian darkness at the altar of the Donald Trump cult of personality. Come with me and I'll prove to you how time is running out and how we can still make the future a better place. In order to appreciate the risk that MAGA poses to America's future through the vehicle of abortion regulation, we need to understand a few key points about MAGA. First and foremost, it is not a political philosophy. It is a cult of personality. It does not seek to advance any principles of governance, but instead to advance the greed, ego, and accumulation of power of one man, Donald J. Trump, the lizard at the top. It is not fiscally conservative. Donald Trump, in a mere 4 years, added $8 trillion to the national debt when he was president. It's not pro-child. MAGA actively supports Vladimir Putin, who is engaged in an unprecedented genocidal campaign against the children of Ukraine, raping, murdering, and kidnapping them on an industrial scale, leading to his indictment as a war criminal. It's not pro-religion. Again, its leader, Donald J. Trump, is a rapist as determined by a jury of his peers, and he's, in fact, just a philandering, 3 times married moral leper. And it's definitely not law and order. Again, its leader, Donald Trump, is an insurrectionist, he's a tax cheat who gives away America's nuclear secrets and is currently seeking absolute immunity from criminal prosecution so he can murder his political rivals without any consequences. When you understand this movement and the fact they seek to expand government and create a government police state type apparatus to invade every aspect of American life, every aspect of intimate relationships, and to tear at the fabric of society, you see the true risk involved. Let's get into the details. Let's take a brief overview of abortion regulation in the United States. Going back to 1973, in that year, the U.S. Supreme Court decided Roe versus Wade, and the holding of that decision was a determination that there is a fundamental constitutional right arising under the U.S. Constitution for a woman to receive an abortion and related health care up to the point of 23 or 24 weeks, that is fetal viability, after the woman becomes pregnant. That being a fundamental constitutional right under the U.S. Constitution overrode all contrary state or federal laws. That was clear. It was a bright line. Unfortunately, in the year 2022, in the Dobbs decision, the U.S. Supreme Court overruled Roe versus Wade, which they're empowered to do under a very boring doctrine that I won't get into called stare decisis. What does that mean? Well, as it currently stands, states are free to regulate abortion basically in any way they see fit. And the MAGA country, the MAGA states, Louisiana, Texas, Alabama, those kinds of places, have effectively banned abortion completely, even in the cases of rape or incest. And although it may appear in these states that there is a health exception to protect the woman's health and provide an exception in that situation, permitting an abortion, upon closer scrutiny, those health exceptions do not exist. And here's why. The exceptions require a doctor to find to an absolute certainty that if an abortion is not performed, the woman will suffer severe and permanent health problems or maternal death. That is a level of legal certainty that is higher than the highest level of medical certainty that is dealt with by gynecologists and obstetricians. The law requires something that medical science does not even achieve. Medical science deals with weighing of risks, not absolute certainties. And so it's impossible to really trigger those exceptions. And the consequences are dire. In Texas, for example, if a doctor is wrong and his judgment is later questioned, say in a prosecution for performing an abortion, when there's perhaps a state medical expert who disagrees with the decision made, that doctor could go to prison for the rest of his life, 99 years. So what ends up happening is no doctor wants to take that risk because it's an impossible standard and it's intended to be impossible to meet that health exception. Women cannot travel out of state because the prosecutors in the MAGA states will pursue them and attempt to prosecute them and attempt to prosecute the doctors and get them in trouble, even though those doctors are located in other states. It's happening right now. So what you have is, even if there's rape, even if there's incest, even if the woman has a severe medical issue, she cannot get an abortion in approximately 12 to 14 MAGA states. That's the future of abortion, and abortion rights and abortion-related health care in the United States if Donald Trump gets elected. And how bad is that? Well, compared to that brutal communist dictatorship that I spoke of earlier in the video, enacted by the dictator of Romania, who was effectively as I described it, the Saddam Hussein of Eastern Europe, behind the Iron Curtain and during the Cold War. His regulation, his anti-abortion law that had these tremendous and awful social impacts of hundreds of thousands of orphans and thousands of women dying and unbelievable suffering amongst the women and children of Romania for a period of 40 years. The law that caused all those bad results was actually far more lenient in favor of abortion than these draconian, awful, Middle Ages, dark laws that we have in MAGA country across basically the bottom half of the United States. Decree 770 is the law that I'm speaking of that was passed by this brutal dictator in Romania that had all these negative effects, which we will describe soon. Under Decree 770, there were several exceptions. There was an exception if the woman was 45 or older. There was an exception meaning abortions were allowed in these circumstances. So if the woman was over 45 or older, if the woman had 4 kids, or if the woman had a serious medical issue. And the key thing with the serious medical issue exception under Decree 770 is that the hospital that wanted to perform the abortion could call the local prosecutor and get pre-approval. So they knew it wasn't a case of, well, the doctor might get charged and would have to prove he was absolutely right later. No, he had a safe harbor because he called the local prosecutor in Romania, got approval, and even if his judgment turned out to be wrong later, nobody could question it. Nobody could prosecute that doctor. That is so different from what we have now in the MAGA states. There's no pre-approval. You just have to roll the dice and hope that you don't end up in prison for life as a doctor. And so this is where we're at. We are worse in this country for abortion rights and abortion-related health care than the most brutal communist dictatorship that had severe and awful social consequences. That's what we're at. That's the future. Let's look at what happened under Decree 770, which is a better law in favor of abortion rights and getting abortions than currently what we have in America. Because if the effects under Decree 770 are terrible, bad, and awful, you can imagine the horrors that await under the worst laws that are currently predominating in MAGA country. If you want to see America's future under Donald Trump, just look to Romania's past under the abortion ban. During this time period, infant mortality and maternal mortality skyrocketed. It was nothing less than a horrific nightmare. Of the 10 million children born during this period, 340,000 died before their first birthday, and another 20% had severe birth defects that required lifelong care. 30,000 women or more died from complications of illegal abortions. The coffee table in the bucket, that comes from a first-person account of a common experience of thousands and thousands of women who had unlawful abortions in Romania. This woman knocked on a door, and she was at an apartment that she'd never been to before, forced to use a code word to get in like some kind of common criminal. She walks in and sees a guy she's never met before who's going to be touching the most intimate parts of her body. And then she sees a coffee table and a bucket. Imagine that. She almost died from complications of that unlawful abortion. She had an infection, and it robbed her of her ability to ever have children again. And finally, look at the Romanian orphans, an unspeakable tragedy. Because of this abortion ban, 300,000 or more babies, toddlers, and children were warehoused in crumbling facilities all across Romania. Imagine 10 infants to a crib, crying in the darkness, ignored, no significant human contact. Imagine thousands of toddlers chained to walls, living in their own excrement for weeks on end. These children were treated like appliances, like pieces of equipment, like furniture. They were not given the love, guidance, and understanding and the human contact necessary to grow into healthy adults. They suffered brain damage from this severe abuse. It would constitute torture, what these children went through, if a soldier was subjected to the same thing as a prisoner of war. It constitutes torture under international law. And this is a scary window into the future. Right now, there are approximately 12 states that have complete abortion bans that are much more barbaric and much more severe than what Romania went through. So you can be damn sure what happened in Romania will be repeated in these states much worse. And if Donald Trump gets his way and gets elected, he wants a national abortion ban. That's right, a 12-state current complete abortion ban with no health exceptions, without any rape or incest exception, and where people can't travel to get an abortion legally. will become the law of the land across America. Let's look at these states briefly: Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, and West Virginia have the harshest laws against abortion. Total bans. Prisoners in their own state. That's what women are subjected to. These also are the states with the highest poverty, the lowest levels of health insurance, the lowest percentage of people with health insurance, the highest infant mortality, and the highest maternal mortality. These are like the four factors or the four horsemen of the apocalypse, because that's what's in store for those 12 states, and if Trump wins, our entire country. We got to fight. The time is now. No exaggeration, no hyperbole. If we don't, we're going to be in store for something that we can't possibly imagine. I appreciate everyone today watching this video. Remember to get involved, make a difference, make your voice heard. And remember to be good to yourself. Good night.